Just going to get started on our presentation. Thank you for joining me as we talk about talent management for everyone. I'm Matthew from NetDimensions. Just going to spend the next half hour or so talking about what we're seeing within the market, what our clients and prospects are asking for. I suppose the one key question that I'm looking to address today is why organizations continue to invest so much time and effort managing our high potential and our high achievers and focusing at the bottom and actually leaving quite a large cohort of employees in the middle who are perhaps a little unloved, a little ignored, and not getting the care and attention that they may do. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at what constitutes the middle and how that relates to organizations. Why shift the middle? Should we really be spending more time with them? I'm going to look at some examples there. What does it take to make some impact there within our middle cohort? And as time permits, hopefully we'll have some time to look at some of the tools that may be available to you and give you some ideas on how you may be able to work with that middle and improve them, which will perhaps be looking at some of the cultural and leadership aspects of your organization. So what is the middle? One way of looking at it is that literally via performance, the outcome of performance appraisals. We did a study about 18 months or so ago with the Brandon Hall group, and the results were quite interesting. We just asked them a very simple question: rate your employees either low performers or high performers, or do they sort of sit somewhere in the middle? And I think we can think about our own organizations and kind of what low looks like. Often we need to respond quite quickly at this point. We can be trying to avoid damage that may be caused to the business, and we may be actually obliged to respond quickly here. At the higher end, again, I can think of what this looks like in our company. The high achievers are very visible. They're making decisions. They're out there both internally within the organization and how they interact with our customers. But what sits in the middle? Well, in this study, the actual results were 60 to 70%, nearly 70% of employees were sort of there in the middle somewhere. Okay, and I think that is a fair enough comment, wouldn't you think? Most of us are in the middle. Most companies are probably in the middle. Even perhaps most countries are in the middle as well. So how should we engage with them? How should we think about them? Well, just looking at the middle by performance isn't the only way. For some organizations, it could be more based on role and what people are doing, our middle managers, middle supervisors. It could be based on skill sets or experience. It could just be that people who are in the middle of their career can actually formulate the middle. So this can be a complex and a deep area, and it's not just one size will fit all for all organizations. So we just need to think a little bit creatively about when we're considering what the middle is within our own organization. Okay, so let's kind of drill into that a little bit further. I've left our Brandon Hall bell curve in there. And really what we're seeing within our clients is actually asking for competency assessments, performance appraisals, reviews, but not just annual reviews, more frequent and informal appraisals, and working that right across both where people may be in relation to their career or even within the role that they're actually establishing and they're carrying out within the business. And it's actually very interesting. It's not just our office-based workers, people who are sat in front of a PC. We're seeing this in a lot of manufacturing businesses. People are asking for tablet-based or mobile-based appraisals, little interventions that can take 5-10 minutes or so, as opposed to a big, scary annual event. And I think it's indicative that more and more workers now are actually becoming knowledge workers, even though they may not historically have been thought of as such. So these people, perhaps in the middle, are not making the big, high-impact decisions, but they're making many decisions a day quite often. And if we can actually achieve a smaller increment with a larger volume of people, the actual impact of that can be pretty significant. So we need to engage our middle. We need to get them to understand what they're doing, the impact that they're having on the business, and the direction that we're all headed in. Okay, so why is the middle important? It's just a few statements that won't be applicable to all companies, but some of the things that were fed back to us from the study we completed. And I think the lens or the way to kind of look at this is, what happens if they leave us? Nightmare if they all go, but what happens if, say, 15 or 20% of our core middle leave us? You know, the feedback that we had, that they provide the hub or the infrastructure for our top performers, for our high achievers, to do what they do. You may be aware that there's a sporting event kind of happening at the moment. Does Lionel Messi get to be the world-class player he is because he's surrounded by other world-class players? No, it's that 50 to 60%, the core middle doing what they do, that enables the A team to achieve. And I think the other thing that we need to consider here is perhaps these statements towards the bottom here. Elbows are a little less sharp, we find, in the middle. You know, the high achievers are more likely to have an appetite for the politics, perhaps, a bit unapologetic for their ego. We don't really see that quite so much, within the middle. And they are less likely, more likely actually to show some loyalty to an organisation and stick with us if we give them some, obviously some attention and manage and develop them correctly through the business. Okay, so perhaps why do we find ourselves unable to do that? If we look at the dark green segment here from sort of 1 to 3 o'clock, this is from a PACE productivity survey we completed, that was completed a few years back. Less than 20% of managers' time is available or is actually deployed on managing people, which is quite interesting in and of itself when we see what the other things that people were doing. We've got sort of 10% of our time spent on strategy and planning, 25% or so on customer issues here, including selling, which is good. Quite a big chunk, 30% of time on internal stuff, and then some miscellaneous items up here at the top. Also, as part of this survey, managers were asked, what is the most important thing that you need to do? And half of them stated that the most important thing was actually managing, developing, coaching people. So we can see there's an immediate disconnect here. We have, by a power of 1 to 2, the most important thing is managing people, but by a power of less than 1 to 5, we actually find the time to do that. So there may be ways in which, if we can loosen up a bit of time and actually commit that to our middle, will actually be very worthwhile in the long term. Okay, so what happens at the moment? Again, here at our low end, when we're managing our low performance, well, people are being appraised. There may be some performance improvement programs, coaching, employee relations. There may be some management of conflict. There may be, some legal obligation to intervene at this level. Obviously, then, it's actually quite sort of time-consuming. And then for our high performers, well, they got it good, haven't they? They get all the fruit. They get all the good stuff thrown at them. Their objectives are aligned to organisational goals. Their learning is very much more personalised, and they get a lot more focus coming through. But what about this? Even if this is 50, 60% of our audience, now they kind of get what everybody else gets. It's catalogue training. Expectations are often a little bit lower, and again, the sort of standard review for everything else. So, we feel, and we're seeing a real appetite in the market actually for, more work and greater emphasis to be deployed there. Well, why would we bother? It's coming back to our original study, the Brandon Hall study. They looked at, the cost of attrition and the recruitment cost of replacing a middle worker. And actually by salary, these would be towards the lower tier of our middle here. It was a very broad cost base. They were looking at the recruitment costs, cost of positions not being filled, time spent as people get onboarded and become productive. And the range was quite a big range, but somewhere from sort of just below £2,500 to £6,000 per head to actually replace those middle workers. Now, even with a conservative attrition, 15% within a 3,000 employee company, that's going to be over £1 million to maybe even actually nudging up towards £3 million to replace that level of attrition. Okay, so when we're if we can get to a point where we feel that we do need to invest a little bit more with our middle cohort, and you're going to your CFO, your chief exec, or whomever holds your budget and say, we really need some some resources to get on top of this, then these are the types of arguments you need to look at this in regard to your own organisation and try and understand not just what the cost of L&D, etc. is, but what happens if they go and we need to replace them. And another way of looking at this, again, similar kind of bell curve. This came from the Sales Executive Council. It's a study they completed in 2003. It was repeated in 2007 with very, very similar results. And they found that a 5% performance gain in the middle 60% yielded more than 70% more revenue than a 5% shift at the top, which seems quite a staggering statistic. But when we, I kind of love this slide, it's so visually engaging. If you look at the vertical strips here, we're looking at our top percentile. Just the space here, the potential for a performance improvement is so much smaller than what the space here in the middle. Okay, so it almost becomes visually obvious, and if even just a small gain within that middle. The actual impact of a small gain within a large cohort in the middle can be very, very meaningful. Now, disclaimer, this was the Sales Executive Council. This was all about salespeople. Salespeople's main job, obviously, is to increase the revenue that's coming into the business. So if you improve your production line to a similar extent, are you likely to achieve a similar revenue increase? Perhaps not. So bear that in mind. But if you are working for a sales-led organisation, it's an absolutely compelling improvement just based on a small increment on increasing the performance of our middle employees. So why don't we do it? Perhaps some of this might look familiar. There's not enough time. Resources are very, very tight. We only do our appraisal once a year, so the technology doesn't kind of work for us. It's not intuitive. Lack of manager buy-in. Find it difficult to kind of reach the audience, and this is the messages that we hear from from our clients often, and some of these issues they're kind of grappling with. So how can we help? What can be done in this area? Well, if your middle forms at least 50% of your audience, however you may choose to define your middle, and you're going to really want to focus on that and bring about some big change, it's going to require a sort of change in the organisational culture. Now that could be a big, scary thing to kind of look at if we're looking at it as it's one big cake. So you want to take it one slice at a time. And it's quite big and scary because you've got all these other stuff kind of pushing down on it, on your organisational culture. So leadership is very important. Very, very rare will a good program get off the ground without significant buy-in. The best way to do that, you can get your chief exec to be on a monthly 360-degree appraisal cycle. It's a big ask. But your C-level execs, business leaders, business partners, getting them to actually be at the front line of how you may change the culture is very, very critical. If you're going to be monitoring and managing performance better, then people are going to need to be trained more. There will be more L&D to be delivered, and so you need to think about, are there more resources available for that, or are we just going to have to deliver more with what we have right now? Okay, so how are we teaching? How are we training? Do we need to think more about e-learning? Do we need to think more about virtual classrooms? Do we need to think about how we can connect our people so they can get the knowledge that's required and kind of just move beyond sort of fairly formal training? And the final thing there about the sort of public or social culture, this isn't all about just looking internally. The example that I cited earlier, manufacturing businesses doing performance appraisals on tablets and so on and so forth. One of their KPIs, their key performance indicators, is if a bit of kit is repaired, if a member of staff sees what they make, and then it's seen again within 12 months, that's a cock-up, okay? It shouldn't be coming back in. So, is it about the bottom line, or are we looking to, just sell more, make more money, or are we just looking to, deliver a better service? So, how do we want to measure this inside the business and likewise outside? Okay. just spend a little time kind of looking at this. Now, assuming we've got to a point where we've identified some gaps in performance, and we've got a view of the other side of that coin, which is the value add opportunities. We have obviously the L&D impact of that. How are we going to plug the gaps that actually are surfaced there? There may be something to do with the roles and work analysis. Well, that could be, well, how do we need to organise ourselves to actually meet the objectives that we have? What are the positions that are required? How many people do we need? Where there may be some efficiencies to be gained from there. And again, one of our client examples was there was a bit of a drop-off between, I guess, kind of their R&D and then how it got to manufacturing and their environmental analysis. But they actually physically brought those teams closer together. Okay. So there's a whole huge amount of work that kind of like needs to happen there, and then hopefully we can get to a point where we can identify very clear required changes and try and keep that as simple as possible to obtain the desired outcomes. Okay, we mentioned before on the earlier slide that the engagement of our senior execs and senior business partners is absolutely essential to drive this through and make it a success. And you can't do this in isolation. How you manage your L&D, your talent, your operations, HR, learning, they've all got to be aligned to make this a success. Okay? Okay, so the tools, how are we going to deploy, how are we going to manage, how are we going to sort of work with expectations? NetDimensions, we're a software company, so you may expect me to tell me that there's silver bullets for all this, yeah? Just come with us and it'll all be fixed. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The tools are merely an enabler, so whoever you decide to actually work with from a technology standpoint, following on from the previous slide, what does that look like in reality? And I think these are the absolute key planks of any successful talent management program, particularly when we're taking a holistic view and not just looking at the top of the tree. So, competency skills, this whole area. If you don't have this very well defined and very well agreed and kind of signed off, and the whole organisation is signed up to competency framework, then forget about the software for now. Okay, this can be a huge body of work. It might not necessarily be the case. However, but we find engagement with customers who are asking for software before this has actually been devolved. Can actually take many, many months, many hard conversations around getting this defined. And it's a difficult balance to reach, because one size doesn't fit all. You're not going to manage your board the same way you manage your blue-collar workers. But there has to be some level of consistency within there so that you can get good measurement and actually good data that you can trust and act on out the other end. Okay, so do not underestimate the amount of work that kind of goes into this. And then everything kind of flows on from there. So if we have defined a competency framework that we are happy with, then how does that sit within a hierarchy? How do we then organise those into job roles or job profiles? How then do we determine the number of employees that we may require? How do we group them together? Okay, that will feed into our orange box then. Okay, if you have an organisational structure at the moment and you go through the process of determining these things, that will change. Okay, be ready for that. That is potentially going to change quite significantly. And from there then, we think about the sort of processes and workflows that follow. Is this going to be driven by HR? Are we expecting managers to take the lead on this? Are we managing goals? Does that come from the individual? Or again, are we going to cascade goals down? Are we going to link personal objectives to what we're trying to achieve as an overall business? Ultimately, if you've been and asked somebody for some money to kind of get an initiative like this off the ground, they're going to want to know that it was effective or not. So you need to think about the data that you'll require, okay, and where you're going to present, your findings back to the business. Okay, so is that just going to be internal data? May you need access to external data? We're trying to improve the performance of our salespeople. We obviously need to know if they sold more stuff off the back of our training. So it's not just enough to lift what we got out of the learning management system or their performance scores based on appraisal. We need to know, did we get the business outcome that we required? So, if we need external data, then think about that now and how you're going to get your hands on it. Okay. So, just one or two practices to ponder. Talent can't operate in isolation. It needs to be looked at by role and by function of the business. Sometimes it's actually just forgetting about the talent and the learning and the appraisal and all that good stuff. And it's like, what are we trying to do as a business? And then kind of work forward from there. When you're looking to kind of do the analysis on your, on your competencies, there's the hard things. You've got to be competent to operate a piece of machinery correctly. But is it important if people are working in a team? Is there an item on a team building or a communication skill that we shouldn't forget? Okay, if people can work better together, will that actually drive the impact that we're looking to have? Okay, so try and think across the piece on both your hard and soft competencies. Making the goal line visible and obvious. We can't do this in isolation. The whole organisation has to be behind this, particularly when we're dealing with, with our middle cohort in particular, as well as our high achievers and at the lower end. Okay, so let's just be honest about what we're trying to achieve. Keep it conservative, hopefully, when you begin. If people are actually mindful and they completely understand very, very easily, how what they're doing fits into the bigger picture, you have a much more increased chance of success. Now, continuous, consistent, transparent feedback loops. Perhaps if we could just get beyond doing the appraisal once a year and it being a real pain would be a step in the right direction. Could it be that, just on a monthly basis? We're not saying that managers don't talk to their individuals, apart from when it's appraisal time, but, just to check in for, say, 10, 15 minutes. Are we on track with some certain, some key things that we're looking to achieve with you as an individual? If I did a fantastic presentation here at this seminar, and my boss said, "Oh, yeah, really well done. We're really proud of you." Could that form part of my HR record? Could that be part of my, of my next appraisal? Okay, and L&D is going to need to be customized. It's going to need to be a bit more personal, and I think we do need to move beyond just the sort of catalogue approach to training. I think a key thing here is if our learning interventions can in some way actually be mapped to competencies. So there's quite a clear direction of travel. If I find that I'm falling behind in a particular area with a particular competency, well, there's an immediate recommendation of where I may be able to get some assistance to get myself back on track, which could be just a coaching session. Go and talk to Steve for 5 minutes. Okay, and then just a very, very quick recap on some of the key points here, that we need to engage the whole company, and everyone needs to be part of this, particularly when we're broadening this out right across the middle. And the technology there can help to drive the decisions and support your enterprise views, but bear in mind it is a tool only, okay? It can't be led by software. It needs to be led by the business and your own processes and what you're actually looking to achieve. Okay, so just a final summary. Perhaps what we're saying, performance management today, or perhaps how it can look in the future. Trying to move our appraisals or our review of performance beyond it being an annual event. Trying to move beyond it being driven by HR or from IT, and it to be owned on the floor within our middle cohort of managers and employees. We're not just focusing on getting the right points so I can get a pay rise. It's not all about the bottom line. That doesn't motivate everybody. They want to be rewarded for different outcomes, for demonstrating the correct behaviours. Now, how can we actually incentivize our employees. And it's a rigid process governed by enterprise rules, so, the correct way to go. Probably not, and probably not especially in the middle. We need to be able to get the right balance between having something that's consistent so that you can measure across departments. So, a competency can be applicable to multiple employees in different roles and departments. However, one size will not fit all, okay? And, we need to ensure that we're addressing that. And the final thing now, I guess, of it being a necessary evil. Often the biggest challenge that we have to face. But, just cast your mind back to some of the fiscal arguments on why this may be a good idea. Yeah, trying to reduce the cost of attrition in recruitment, and actually working on a mechanism to understand that if we can achieve a small or a minor improvement just within the middle, then the actual impact on the organisation as a whole can be very, very, very significant indeed. Okay, so just as a final closing couple of screens to give you an idea on how some of the tools may assist you with this. This is kind of how it looks in our software. We have here Carol going through a performance review, and she needs to shadow George through some sales cycles. Well, why? Why would I do that? And it's quite clear that it's actually linked to an overarching organisational goal. This organisation are trying to, improve retention. So this is a cascading objective. The organisation as a whole has a view of what they're trying to achieve. Now, this is how this relates to this one particular individual. And again, we love to look at our strengths, don't we? Okay, so Carol's got some great strengths around initiative, effective working, values and ethics, and so on and so forth. Quite clear sort of sliders here. The red line is where you need to be, so anything over, you're above where you need to be, overachieving. Well done, Carol. Okay, here is just about sort of good enough. And the final point to look at though is, okay, well, perhaps the weaknesses is an area that perhaps needs a little bit more focus. So for Carol, we're looking at building relationships and financial management. We can see she's sort of below the line here. Now, you may notice the reviewers. So Kat is the primary reviewer. So Carol reports to Kat. And then we have a 360-degree appraisal here, which is just being reviewed by a peer. It's actually anonymized in this case. And bit of a disconnect on some of the feedback here. Yeah, she's got funny concepts in financial management. Carol has great potential. She can improve on managing relationships. So, where there are weaknesses, right here there have been some mapped training courses. So right there, so trying to bring learning and performance much closer together. Okay, we're in the appraisal. You've got some areas for improvement. Immediately then, some suggested courses, and when Carol returns to her desk, those courses are right there immediately in her training plan and encouraging her to act quickly for the overall good of the business. So almost to the half hour, my time is up. Thank you very much for coming, and thanks for listening, and thanks for your attention. We're just over there. If you want to come and talk to me about anything that I've covered today, I'd be delighted to do that. And if you would like the white papers, the studies, if you want to get into the data for the charts and the other stats that I shared with you, again, very, very happy to share that with you. Thank you all again.